Right.
I guess it's time to begin. Going to call the meeting to order of the Civil Service Merit Board for May 10th, 2023. And let's first call the roll and see who everybody is here. Jay Roberts, Mark Dukes.
Here.
Stephanie Taylor.
Present.
And Scott Schimmel is not here, and I'm Bill Lyons, and I am obviously present. Okay, the first item is the approval of the minutes of the meeting held on April 12th. Do I have a motion for approval? Mark, yes.
I have a question. There's something on the agenda that I didn't mean to be on the agenda, and I didn't know when I should make a motion to ask for it to be removed.
When it comes up,
So wait till it comes,
that's what I would do.
okay. After you cited the Robert's rules, I had to do some research. I thought I did it right before the meeting started.
Well, we can do it that way, but under our rules, we have a specific rule on the call to order and business order.
Uh-huh.
And I think when that comes up, when the chairman calls it up, if you want to delay it, postpone it, defer it, or whatever, that's the time to bring it up and then we'll talk about it.
Okay. Very good.
And I guess, among the items, I guess you could table it, or just I give you withdrawal, right? Is that an item?
Usually,
I'm
it
just
depends
curious.
on what it is
Yeah.
and what the motion is. If he wants to defer it, we can talk about that, we can lay it on the table.
Right.
But if it's just a matter for discussion, we can take it off if we don't want to talk.
Okay, so we could just have a withdrawal of that. We'll wait till that comes.
Okay, yeah.
We can have a motion to withdraw, or whatever we want to call it.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion. A motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it, and the item passes. So now we will go into the rest of the agenda, beginning with reports. We have reports involving litigation. Mr. Winchester, anything?
I have nothing to report, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
And Mr. Shields, do you?
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing from the law department this month. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now we have the staff report from Civil Service.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Hatfield.
2 months worth since I wasn't here last month, few carryovers.
I hope that went well now.
I appreciate you guys excusing me last month so that I could chair the TPMA conference, and as no good deed goes unpunished, they nominated me to be on the board for this year, so it looks like I am going to be on the TPMA board as the East Tennessee representative.
It was the video.
It was the video. It was the video opened by Boyce Evans, I think, specifically. So I will be participating on that level, and I'm happy to do that. Firefighter recruit update. We did previously post firefighter recruit. For the first time in my 24 years with civil service, we did not get a sufficient number of applicants for firefighter recruit. This is just it is just the phenomenon of the day. Recruitment is our biggest hurdle these days. The fire department requested to hold on reposting until they took a look at the numbers they had. They do a preliminary background check, which means they look for absolute disqualifiers first. Because they know they can go ahead and eliminate anyone with an absolute disqualifier. Those folks can't be hired. After that review, they did not have a sufficient number of candidates, so we actually did put the posting back up again. It closed. We are wrapping up the testing for that second round and hope to be sending that referral. I believe that's next week when that wraps up. So just an update on that process. Police recruit update. We've made a lot of changes this year between civil service and HR. They've kept us rolling with the changes, but I do think everything we've done so far has been super productive and super helpful. As this board knows, the most recent change was the removal of the traditional written exam, which was a multiple choice cognitive-based test, replaced that with a simplified exam, which reviews the essential minimum qualifications for the job. The goal there was to be able to get these applicants in touch with KPD as quickly as possible, because we were losing about 50% of them before we even gave the test. They were dropping out of the process. So our hope was that by getting them over to KPD really quickly, KPD could grab them, start working with them, keep them engaged, and maybe not lose as many through that first stage of the process. We hit a barrier pretty quickly, and that was the personal history questionnaire is a document that's required to do the background investigation when it gets to the later stages of the process. It was simplest for that to continue to be collected at the time of the application, and so that was our goal, was to continue to try to do that. What happened is no one was submitting a completed questionnaire. So it was still delaying us getting those candidates because we had to keep following up. We would have to follow up 2 or 3 times trying to get that information from them. So they continue to just linger in the process. So we worked with KPD and HR to change that PHQ to a later part of the process. So now, as soon as that application comes in, my staff is screening them, and at the end of the week, they are sent over to KPD. So it's now working the way we were hoping it would be working. It does shift more of it over to the KPD side, but it's allowing them to get those candidates and get in contact with those candidates usually within about a week of them applying. So it's too early to know what the results of that are, but I'm already tracking data. I'll continue to track data, and as there is enough meaningful data to report back and see if we've seen some improvements, I'll provide that to you guys. Promotional testing for KPD supervisors just took place. Another change that Chief Noel and I discussed since the testing was done last year. For, I know, at least 24 years, Civil Service has, with the request of the police chiefs that we have had, used a general management in-basket exam for all supervisory levels of the police department. We've used the same exam, the same provider for, I'm gonna say, going on 30 years, because I know it was well established when I came in 24 years ago. Several years ago, we started to have, when the shift was made from a paper pencil exam and that exam was put online, we started to have a lot of problems with it, just to be honest. It's one provider, one vendor. The technology never seemed to work the way we needed it to. So the last 2 or 3 times we've administered that exam, we had significant technical issues. And it left me concerned about the integrity of the exam, to be frank. Chief Noel and I reviewed it prior to its use last year, and both agreed to go forward with using the in-basket exams, and we had significant problems. So after that process, we jointly decided to forego the in-basket exam. And going forward for sergeant, lieutenant, and captain, we're doing our structured oral interviews, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that process, we arrange for raters to come in from other municipalities, and they have to be at a higher rank than the rank that they're evaluating. We have a panel of raters along with an observer, a witness from Civil Service, and it's a structured oral interview with questions that are job knowledge questions developed in cooperation with the police department. I believe there are 5 approximately questions for each exam. Each candidate is brought in, they're given, the person is asked each question in turn. It's timed, they have a certain number of minutes to answer each question. The raters rank them, and they receive a score at the end of that process. That is the exam process we're using now. And based on the results of that process, compared to the results we received previously with the in-baskets, I feel much better about the exam process we're using. So we just concluded that last week. I have to give huge thanks to Missy, who sat in 3 days of oral interviews and listened to the same questions about 100 times being answered, along with the raters. But she actually got that referral out the very next day. So she did a great job on that. So KPD has those referrals. And that hopefully will be the practice that we'll keep in place going forward. I would not change the exam at this point unless the chief came back and said, hey, we want to look at something different. So for now, that's the process in place for the foreseeable future. And as a reminder, we do that once a year. So anybody who becomes eligible within the year will be able to go through this process next year. And if any of you were wondering, did we see a huge influx of additional applicants because those, if you remember, you agreed to reduce the requirements, the years of service? We did not. So it looked very similar to what we've seen in previous administrations, and we did not have this huge number of additional applicants that we weren't expecting. So felt very good about that process. We're also looking at some new advertising sites. As I said, recruitment is one of our biggest, it's a huge struggle. I mean, it's not just us, it's everywhere. If I heard one thing at the TPMA conference from every other city and county, it is we cannot get applicants. Everyone is having the same struggle, so we're all having to throw everything at it that we can and see what sticks. So right now we are, yes.
Is that pretty well universal across the whole range of positions, or is it isolated to some? I mean, is it through management?
It's pretty universal. We see it more in jobs where we have high turnover, and so we're trying to do more hiring. We're hiring more people at a time. I'd say we probably notice it less in jobs that don't vacate very frequently, because those typically, we don't get a lot of applicants anyway. So you have, professional engineer. We've never had 100 applicants for that job. So those kind of jobs where we've never had a large number of applicants, we probably don't see it as much as we do in the entry-level jobs where we have a lot of vacancies and that we're trying to fill regularly. So public service worker, police, fire, some of our public works type jobs, skilled trades type jobs, that's where we see it the most. That's where it's most obvious, because we have those postings all the time. And even entry-level clerical. They used to beat our door down. We would have 200 applicants. Now I think KPD has been trying to fill a single clerical position for over a year. Because everybody doesn't want to interview. We've had, they get to the point where they select someone and then that person just turns the job down. So it is a problem everyone's experiencing, so we're doing all the things we can to try to address that. And one of those things, we've always been lucky enough to be an employer where people just want to come work for us. And so it was very easy. We didn't have to really go out of our way to look for applicants because they found us. They wanted to work for the city of Collinsville. Now you have, I heard something new at the TPMA conference, pay on demand, an app where you get paid every day when you go to work for someone. People have different wants and expectations. So we are trying to branch out in where we are recruiting. Laura from my staff has been exploring a lot of other advertising sites. So now we are making use of Indeed, LinkedIn. The mayor's office helped us get a LinkedIn account set up so that we can do some recruiting through LinkedIn. And she's using UT's Handshake to maybe try to recruit some recent college graduates from some of our jobs that require college education. So we're trying some new recruiting sites. Another thing that we have done to try to combat our low applicant numbers is we've implemented an online scheduler, so that now when someone applies for a job and it's a test that they have to actually come in and take in person, our online scheduler is live. So they get a link, they can actually go in, look at all the available test dates and times, choose their own, and we're blending, for the first time ever in civil service, we're blending exams. So back in the day, we would have one test for principal secretary. Everybody testing for that job would come in at the same time on the same day. They would get a paper booklet and a Scantron sheet and take a test. Today, we may have 5 different exams going on at the same time on the same day, because they come in, they sit at a Chromebook, they're given their instructions, they log in and they take their individual test. The other thing that has opened up is now we have added in automatic scoring, so that eSkill, thank goodness, we love eSkill, it's the best thing we were ever allowed to do. eSkill automatically scores the exam and sends them their score. So there was a time when we actually sent a letter. We actually sent in the time I've been here, we would have to type up a letter and print it and put it in an envelope and mail it to someone to tell them what their score was. Now, before they get to their car, they have an email providing them their score. So all of these things have freed up a lot of our manual processes that were more cumbersome, and they're significantly more user-friendly to the applicant. And we're hoping that that online scheduler will cut down on no-shows. That's one of the things I'm going to briefly mention when I talk about my some of the things that I did in preparation for my budget hearing. I pulled some data, so I'm kind of just segueing. Pulled some data because I love data, and if you are on the board long enough, you'll know I love to look at data. And not long ago, I had done a dig into the police recruit data, about 16 years worth, just to try to identify where were our biggest losses, and was there something we could do in those loss areas to try to remedy some of the issues we were having. I did something similar just for all positions, just to give myself a sense of where are our biggest hurdles, because I hadn't really looked at that for all positions. So I actually did pull applicant data for citywide. So police, fire, and general government positions just all blended together. And some of the interesting outcomes of that I noted, and it tracked exactly along with those three main areas of need that I found when I did the police data, that where we're struggling, we're simply not getting the applicant numbers that we used to get. They're just not applying in the first place. We're losing a significant number of applicants between application and time of exam. And our turnover rates have continued to rise throughout the city. So recruitment and then retention. And recruitment's not as big a problem if you can retain people, because you're not recruiting as much. So those two go hand in hand. But what I did note in all the things that we've already been trying to do, some of these have been initiatives of HR, some have been initiatives of civil service. We're still tracking downward on applicants, unfortunately. Even after the comp changes last year, which we really hoped would bring in new applicants with greater entry salaries, we actually went down another 10% since last July. So that one is continuing to track downward. However, our DNR rate, which is no-shows, people who apply for a job and then at some point just drop out. They never show up. They apply and then they disappear out of the process. That we have actually seen that number starting to improve. So already some of the things we've started doing, and they're very new. So I do hope that over the next year, we're going to see more significant improvement in that area. We've already seen some, and turnover. For the first time in about 10 years, turnover trended in the right direction. So, and I credit that to the comp changes that HR made, that employees that might have left otherwise, maybe they were retirement eligible or might have gone to another employer, decided to stay. So that was the first time in a long time we've seen an improvement in overall turnover. So I thought that was some pretty interesting data. I just pulled that because you never know what council might ask. But we did have our budget hearings with council, and as usual, we had nothing particularly riveting. But two things to point out to you guys is that the elimination of that written exam for police recruit and the elimination of the in-basket, I went back to see approximately what we spend per year, $25,000. So that's a significant amount freed up in our budget. That some of that, hopefully, we're going to be using for some of these other things that we're trying to do, the online scheduler. We thought about looking at QR codes to take somebody straight to an application. So now we have a little more funding for some of those things, as well as any additional improvements that eSkill might offer us. But at the end of the day, I think we might even have a budget surplus given that, but we won't really know maybe till the end of this year because we do have those. We have hearing expenses we can't really predict. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of the year how we look on that. But I think that was a good savings and good changes, not for the purpose of saving money, but that was just a great byproduct.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? I got a comment. I just want to thank both of you, Vicki and Mike, for all your flexibility and hard work in accommodating those requests for
JPD, I think we all knew where we wanted to get and allowing them in the recruitment environment that they have. And I know they're very appreciative of our flexibility, and I think that was all handled really well. And I think we got to a good place with a minimal amount of angst. So, thank you.
I'll add a comment too. Good job. This is excellent news, and I do definitely appreciate the data and sharing all that with us, because it's not easy out there in the recruiting realm, and I think the changes that you've made will definitely, help keep in pace with, competing out there in the private sector too. So very, very nice. Very nice to know.
Well, the next item is the HR report. I believe Kelly Roman is with us.
Yes.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
willing to fill us in.
Would you like to sit down?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I was not able to give you the actual specifics, but I've got about 4 or 5 things on here that I want to talk about today. The first one is coming up on next Tuesday. We will go to City Council. Annually, we're required to submit our AIS for changes for the classification system. So that will go into City Council. It will require 2 readings for this. And so it will also have the step changes that are going on for uniform government, for the uniform body, police and fire. So you will see those changes. We are asking for one thing very particular, that we're going to make a change in interns. Currently, the pay for interns is very, very low. So we're adding a range for interns from $10 to $15 an hour for intern 1 and $11 to $16 an hour for intern 2. That'll go into effect on June 1st. So that is being done so we can hire interns for the summer. I wanted to let you know that. Additionally, we're doing training on June 7th. It will deal with documentation, ensuring working with supervisors. This is supervisory training, how to ensure that you're doing documentation. We will have updates. We're asking IT. They have a 16-page update for computer usage. So I don't know what employee is going to read 16 pages. So we're going to do a training to help supervisors to understand those things as well. So that'll be June 7th. We do quarterly training. One of the pieces that I want to address specifically, excuse me, I apologize, specifically dealing with talent acquisition. As Vicki indicated, they work specifically dealing with recruitment for open positions. HR is on the other side of things, dealing specifically with talent acquisition, thinking about succession planning, thinking about the future. Before those vacancies happen, how do we work on those things? So while we are doing recruitment for open vacancies, HR is looking and working with directors to think about the future. 12 months out, 24 months out, 36 months out, what are you forecasting? What's going on in that process? As we're looking at that, we're actually planning to do a lot of recruitment fairs this year, going to universities, making a plan. That's something that has not been done in a while, so we're going to be looking at what needs to happen. Today, for instance, the John T. O'Connor Senior Citizen had a recruitment fair today. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at. How can we go and head up? As we think about seniors, looking at positions, those 50 plus, I'm one of those 50 plus, but looking at those 50 plus, those individuals have retired and now they're wanting to come back into the workforce. So how do we think about that? How do we develop relationships and working with them, so we are actively doing talent acquisition before positions open? Because as Vicki indicated, that recruitment phase, you got to do something a little bit different because the numbers are going down and down and down. So we can pick up on the front end to help to increase those numbers by building that relationship before the vacancies actually occur. So we're really excited about that. We're also working specifically with the directors to look at retention. And when we think about retention, that falls on the HR side of the house. As we look specifically at retention, we are thinking, why are people leaving? One of the things that I would love to do, have not gotten approval to do this, is to do an engagement survey. We do an exit survey, and it's something that we actually do use a QR code for the
exit survey. But we're now looking, and we have staff that look directly at the exit, but we really need to look at this while they're here. Why do people stay interviews? So those are some things that we're looking. Also, HR is in the process of doing bonus payouts. It was due on the beginning of May. All of the department, there's a 0.05% after 1% that each department gets to pay out bonuses, and it was due May 1st. So we're actively trying to get all of those paid out as well. The other piece that we're working on is updating our onboarding piece. As we talk about retention and why people stay, the first thing that we know is that people need to have a great first day experience. You have to come on a job and you have to love that job and want to be on that job. So one of the things that we're looking at is our onboarding process. As you all know, we've hired a training coordinator that is will work specifically on this. And part of what they will be doing is doing recordings of our onboarding process. It is really lengthy. It's a half a day process, and people show and sometimes they don't show, and so there's a lot of information. So we're looking at how do we make that more interactive, how to have a better opportunity for that first experience. How do we do some of those things? Last but not least, we're still working on job descriptions. We're still looking at that. Those deadlines have months passed, but department directors are still working on those things. We're looking at how do we detail what that hybrid work environment looks like, who's eligible for hybrid work. We're looking at job descriptions. What are those things that we need to ensure, working with every director. We're looking at all of that analysis process that has been done. Some of those things hadn't been done in multiple years because the vacancies haven't been there. So we're actually going over every position description within the city, updating all of those things and ensuring that those things are the most up to date. In the past, it was done as the vacancies occurred. So we're looking at those things. So HR has been pretty busy. We have a talent acquisition person that's actually on staff. That is her primary responsibility. She's an HR generalist. And then we've hired a training coordinator. And we're in the process of seeking another HR generalist. So we are really focusing on building a stronger relationship with each of the departments so we can work on those things and move forward. So that's what we have.
Thank you.
Been a little busy. Thank you.
Anybody have any
I was about to
questions?
say that I.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I like the way you said that. You said you're doing state interviews or going to start doing state?
That is one of the things-
That's fascinating because I was like, that really does. It's like,
I would love to do state interviews. Have not had the approval. And let me tell you why you don't do state interviews. You have to be willing to do something about the information.
Right.
So what we're needing to do is, once we find that, are we willing to get those low-hanging fruits? What are those things we're able to do? So that is one of the things that I've spoken specifically with the mayor. I would like to consider this in the fall of this year. That's one of the things I'd like to consider.
I think that's fascinating. I was like to my own business world, so.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Again, excellent work, HR and civil service, coming from that profession.
Yes.
Y'all are blowing me away. You're doing a lot of great things here. And I remember last month talking about updating all those job descriptions. That is a feat. So that's amazing work. That's a lot of very important work towards retention and accurate classification. So that's very exciting information, and really nice things coming from the departments. So.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question? You used a term that I'm not familiar with. Is it hybrid work classification or employee?
Hybrid work, yes. Hybrid
Tell me
work.
about that real quick.
Hybrid work is working remotely, but not full remote. So a hybrid work environment is that you could work 3 days a week in the office and 2 days. So that's the hybrid blend. Remote talks about full remote work wherever you want to be. I could live in California and I could work here. Hybrid says I'm going to work X number of days in office and X number of days remotely wherever that person works. So we're looking at hybrid and work and remote opportunities, with the preface being specifically on what works hybridly.
I was gonna say, is that in certain job classifications and not in others, or is that across the board?
It is in certain jobs, it cannot be across the board. When you look at a public service, you can't have a hybrid work from public service when you need empty trash. That doesn't make sense. But if you're looking for something that is, and I'll use a HR analyst and civil service, that is an opportunity that could be a hybrid work environment. But what we're looking at and working specifically with the directors to determine what is it that they want. Do they see their position? We're doing also a lot of benchmarking to determine which positions are best used. You can't have a police officer at all remotely. And so are there some clerical positions that could? As you remember, during COVID, most positions, was an emergency situation. As we come back into work, what we're finding is that in most municipalities, people want you back in the office. But what we found is that there are opportunities that people are working and keeping up with what needs to happen in a remote or hybrid environment. So that's what we're looking at to determine what those situations are. And we're going to do a training in the fall. Once all of these things, if we can get every supervisor to work with us on these job descriptions, and once that's done, once that is done.
I turned mine in on.
Yes. Yeah. Once that's done, then the plan is that by fall, we, in our September meeting, that we will have supervisory training, because what we have found is that most people have an issue with hybrid work because of supervision. It is not because of the employee, it's because the supervisor is not adequately supervising the employee's work. So we're gonna work to do some of those things, but that's the hybrid
Thank
environment.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I think that will be a huge win for recruitment.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate her tackling this very arduous task.
I mean, get it down to be a performance and how do you supervise that, it's gonna be interesting. But it's gonna be a learning process. But
Okay, well, thank you for those two excellent reports. Now we can go to new business. I don't think we have any unfinished business. And we'll wait till we actually get to the item before you.
Oh, no, yeah.
So we'll start with item 5, request by Fire Chief Stan Sharp to exempt one position of principal secretary to use as a temporary hire until 2 vacancies in the fire department have been filled. Do we have any?
They asked if they needed to be here. This was so routine and
Right.
standard that I said that would really be unnecessary. So if you have any questions, it is exactly as it reads. They have one fire marshal's office, they have 2 clerical positions they vacated at the same time. So they have no one in there. So they're just trying to quickly get a temporary clerical person until both of those positions can be filled. I believe we have already referred one of them, and we're in the process of, I think we're close to referring the second one. So I don't think this is something we're gonna need for a long time, but I would recommend our standard language that up to a year. I think they'll need it for a couple of months at best, but that way they have that. Usually you put some cap on it, and the temporary cap at the city is officially a year, so.
Thank you, and I do
It's
think,
good.
Stephanie, I can't see you. You had signed up. Do you wish to speak to this?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any discussion of this?
It's up to you. I mean, on exempt positions that are temporary like this, under your rules and the charter, if it's in the best interest of the city, doesn't violate any merit system or merit principles, it doesn't. It's just up to you to vote on it.
Okay. Any questions or discussion from the board? Okay, then with that, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of item 5, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Ayes have it. So item 5 passes. Now, item 6, I think that is one, Mark, that you wanted to, is that the one that you, 6 and 7, or?
Well, they're both me.
Okay.
Yeah, 6, after the last meeting, the deputy teacher director, I was asking them about promotions and how that, there was a timeline, and then Then there was a testing. The testing was unknown, and it was for a non-competitive pay advancement that's basically along their career path. And spoke to Dr. Hatfield, and she knows the system inside and out. She goes, actually, it'd probably be fine to remove the test and create that clarity for everybody. So that's how this came about.
I do have a suggestion if you want. Is this the one you wanted to take off? Because I'm
No.
so prepared to move forward with this.
I think this
it's
is what we
very
need.
good. Okay, good. It's very good. Mike and I had a tremendous amount of conversation on this one. We went through every scenario we could think of, how we could expedite what, and I'm going to keep it as brief as possible, and if you want more, I'll give you more, but it starts to get very complicated because it's something I know and do every day, and it might be harder for those who don't do it every day to know what I'm referring to. But we went through various possibilities. How could we speed up, so basically make those promotions happen faster in cases, and to clarify, there are different types of postings at the city. So when we get a requisition for a position, sometimes it's unclassified. I verify this is unclassified, that just goes straight to HR. We don't do anything in civil service. If it is classified, most of them are what are called open competitive positions, which means anyone can apply for it, including people who don't currently work for the city. That's the vast majority. Those we have to post, we have to have an entry-level exam, we refer that, we rank, that's how those work. We have two types of promotional opportunities at the city. And our rules, and this is where it gets a little complicated, so I don't want to give more detail than is needed, because our rules don't break this apart. This is in practice. This is how it works on a practical level. When I receive a requisition for a promotional only position, there are two types. And so I review those to see which type we have. One type is a competitive promotion. A competitive promotion means only city employees with civil service status can apply, but there are a limited number of vacancies, and they have to compete for that. So we may have 10 people who are eligible, and only one person is going to get that promotion. That is a competitive promotion. Non-competitive promotion is my own word. So where does that come? It comes from me. Non-competitive promotion is what we have always called promotions that are not a competitive promotion with a limited number of vacancies. They are a natural progression in a job series beyond the entry level. So we have certain job series within the city where there are 2, 3, 4 classifications in progression beyond level 1, but the job duties don't essentially change. It's that you've met additional experience and education requirements to move to the next level of essentially the same job. So engineer 1 to engineer 2, office assistant 1 to office assistant 2 to office assistant 3. The job itself doesn't really change. The employee has bettered him or herself, reached qualifications that have been established by the department head and the HR department, and now warrant promotion. In those, that employee is not competing against other employees for that position. A department typically sends a requisition for all employees who are ready for that next level, and then we go through this same process of testing and ranking, and then every person who passes gets promoted. So there is a way to speed that process up. The ones that are non-competitive in nature, where every employee who qualifies is going to be promoted. The best examples of those, to be honest, are in the uniform bodies. We have in our rules themselves, senior firefighter is a rank that everyone who tests and passes that test promotes. And no one fails that test, I will just say. No one fails it. Same with police officer 1 through 4. Right now, we post that, they test, everyone who passes the test promotes, and no one fails that test. So essentially, we have some steps in there that really aren't necessary. And after looking at a lot, we're looking at, I'll just be honest, I made it more complicated. I was throwing out some really complicated options that after Mike and I kept going back and forth, I recognize that the ability to do this is already within our current rules. We do have provisions that allow us to do this right now without making changes, on a case-by-case basis with agreement from the department head. So in any case where I have 3 engineers who are ready to promote, it's simply a matter of me discussing with that department head what the exam will be. That's already in the rules, that's how we do it. And that exam can simply be a training and experience questionnaire that qualifies that yes, they've met the minimum experience and education requirements for the position, and that eliminates the need for what we're doing now, which is actually a competitive exam. That will save a lot of time and allow those promotions to happen significantly faster. So after a lot of work, thanks to Mike, I recognize we actually already have the ability to do this whenever it's requested.
I've got to say something, I've been here a long time. Very few times have they ever said the lawyers made it quicker and easier.
Well, that's on the record now. That's on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, let me hear that. No, but quite frankly, the fact that we have such an experienced and capable, this isn't a mutual admiration society, it's just, she knows what she's doing, and with her, we don't always, the lawyers don't always know what y'all are doing every day because you don't need us for the everyday stuff. But when we hear how they're doing it and apply it to the rules and the framework that we are familiar with, it helps us understand. And she understands how we're doing it, and that made it easier to figure out. So thank you for that. Thank you.
So the short answer is we can do this. And I won't apply it in a case where a department head doesn't want it applied, but I honestly can't see that ever being the case. Because
Especially with
it
retention
simplifies
issues.
the process
Right.
significantly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, there's still a finance, the finance people still have to be ahead, they can't get ahead of the finance. They still have to approve that on the budget.
And Boyce will like the fact that it still requires him to say yes. So I will, going forward, start, when I identify one of those, before we put the posting up, checking with the department head to see how their preference is to handle that particular.
Well, thanks for raising it. I appreciate all the information. That's very helpful.
That's how our conversation was. It was like, oh, let's figure out how to do this.
Yeah,
And
just-
we can do it this way. I mean, and so.
I originally thought it would require rule change, and I had gone down a very complicated road. And Mike helped me to realize that we really didn't need to do all that. That actually the rules already, we pulled out the rules that actually allow us to do a simplified process already.
That existed already.
Okay, well, this was not a voting item. It's good discussion. I wondered if you have any comments, Stephanie?
Just really supportive. I think it's a good thing for employees. So thanks for bringing it
Okay,
to the board.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And now we're to item 7.
Oh, and this came in that same conversation. Well, it was a follow-up for when I first got appointed to the board. Vicki reached out. We had a great meeting, and she had a lot of great suggestions, and neither one of us were taking notes. And I said, could you send me an email about items you're thinking about, we'll look at, review, in the next year and a half or so. And so when I called about item 6, I said, by the way, could you send me the email about this item? And so I never meant for it to be an agenda. It was on the agenda. It was
Okay.
clearly just for me to be informed.
I heard you say you wanted it to the board. And so the only way I can give something to the whole board would then be to do it under this, to do it this way.
And for us to discuss it generally, we
Yeah.
need to do it in a public forum.
I didn't realize you just wanted it for you.
Yeah,
I could just send it to you.
well, and I did the same thing for like the police chief. I said, because he was talking about something with it, I was like, I'd love to hear what you see, because I live by the Barrett system completely different than you do. So, send me an email. So, it was just so I could, be more informed as a new board member.
And he got a tremendous amount of information from, he's the first board member who's asked for old minutes.
And I read them all.
You got a lot of old minutes to read, so I appreciate that.
Do you have your own copy of the charter just as it applies to what we do? Because I have a copy if you need it.
I'll take that.
Or
And
anyone else, because
I have the rule book too. And I was like,
Well, do you have all of Article 10, which is our personnel system?
I do not. Oh,
And anyone
that's
else-
sad. That makes me excited. I'm sorry.
This is what I,
So
does anyone else
he's
want a copy?
very eager.
Anybody else need or want a copy? This is what I carry around because this is really what we deal with every day.
So there's paint drying right now, so well, at least I'm not Mark Dukes. Well then, and that's what it was, so that's why I wanted to make a motion to have it taken off the agenda,
Okay.
because it was never supposed to be there.
Gotcha.
So,
I say,
Motion and a second. I guess we might as well vote on taking it off the agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Don't think, why anybody would oppose it. But you gotta ask.
do you really have to ask after it's been unanimous?
Well, if we're gonna take something off the agenda, we do have to vote on that.
Yeah.
No, I meant after it said there's 4 ayes, and there's no one left to say
Well,
no.
what, and
That's
again,
what he was left.
let me speak briefly to that since I've been accused now of doing things briefer, so I will keep that. When we were under the COVID guidelines and we were able to do Zooms and electronic, we had to take a roll call vote where we had to go by person because the people that were listening, some had the ability by computer to hear us but not see us and know who's talking. So some of the, but our rules have always required a roll call vote for taking things on and off. Now, if we're all unanimous and the chairman does it right, and he does, if we're all voting aye, but when he asked for nay votes, if there had been a nay vote, then we would have had to register who voted nay.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, I probably didn't have to do the second part, but it's part of the routine.
You did very well.
Thank you. Sort of used to that, even if it's gratuitous. Do we have any other business anybody would like to bring up? Well, great. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I say.
Okay, a motion to second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm not even gonna ask.